Hello, my name is Lieutenant Commander Cole. I'm with the United States Navy. We're filming currently aboard the USS Kitty Hawk, and I'm glad to come before you because it gives me an opportunity to talk to you about some of the things that have strengthened me throughout the years. I've been in the Navy for 20 years. I'm a Navy pilot. I've done everything from flight instructing to flying aircraft in harm's way. As a pilot in the Navy, we often find ourselves going through different emergency situations. And sometimes those emergency situations become real, and we have to have something to rely on. And as a Christian, we rely on Scripture. I'd like to read to you a little bit of Psalm 91. It's called Safe in the Lord, and it reads, "Those who go to God Most High for safety will be protected by the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, you are my place of safety and protection. You are my God, and I trust you." It's been a great distress sometimes in my life to find out, what am I really doing here? Why am I doing things that would cause me to take another's life? That's a difficult situation that we find ourselves in. And in the military, we have a thing, organization called Officer Christian Fellowship. A lot of times, a lot of the pilots and the navigators and some of the other officers on the ship will get together, and we'll talk about those things that bother us most, those things that, the question of why am I here? What am I doing? Is this pleasing to God? Is this God's will? Am I going against my faith? Am I going against God? Do not kill. But then you look at the times when God told the Israelites when they went into the promised land that there were certain factions that they had to utterly destroy. And there are times when we have to believe that the things that God says to us are things that he wants us to do, because those forces are forces of evil. Those forces are being used by Satan himself. And to be able to counter those forces, we may have to go out and utterly destroy. I've been fortunate enough that in my life, God has shown me different things. He has expanded my knowledge of him. He's expanded my wisdom about his will for my life. When I came on board this ship, I didn't know what I was doing here. I didn't know where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. And I asked God many times for understanding. I asked him for knowledge and wisdom. And he gave me a thirst for the word that was something that I could not even imagine that I would ever do. And that's why I'm standing here before you today, because that thirst has brought me to a point in my life where the only thing I can do is tell others what God has done for me. We got two hangar bays. Right now you're in hangar bay 1, then there's hangar bay 2. If you combine both hangar bays, you have roughly about 2.5 to 3 acres of land altogether. You can put probably about, well, I can't tell you how many airplanes they can put in here because I think that's classified, how many airplanes they can get in at one time, but they can stack the hangar bay with airplanes quite a bit. Now we separate hangar bay 1 and hangar bay 2 with what we call divisional doors. Those doors are huge. They are designed, they're probably about 3.5, 4 feet thick. And when they're closed, they can close within 8 seconds. So what happens is, when they close, there's a loud horn that sounds. You want to get away from them. And they're used if there's a fire in hangar bay 1, well, you don't want the airplanes in hangar bay 2 to catch on fire, so they'll close those doors, and they close extremely fast. And if you're in the way, it can be very dangerous. At night on the bridge is dark. The only light that you have on the bridge are red lights. That's it. Why? Because you have to be able to see out. Your night vision is destroyed by white lights. So if, for some reason, for pilots, before they go flying at night, they have to do what's called dark adapt. Dark adapt means you have to stay in a dark environment where there aren't any white lights, because if you ever notice, once you wake up in the morning, early in the morning, and the first thing you open your eyes, you can't see, right? The pupils are wide open. As soon as that light hits it, the pupils close. And for a pilot at night, when the pupils are closed like that, you can't see distant vision. You can't see things that are far away. So you have to have your night adapt so that your pupils are wide open by the time you come out on the flight deck and man up your airplane and launch off the pointy end. Because once you launch off the pointy end, all the lights go away. The only lights you see are the lights that are in the stars. In the radars, all the lights in the radar screens are green. Okay, a real mild green. Okay, they have a film on them so you can see those.
Is this our TV too?
No, this is a radar repeater.
Is that the thing that goes? Is it?
Kinda, yeah. Yeah, but don't turn it on because they're not hooked up right now, I don't think. Okay, so you have this side belongs to the captain. Normally when he's up here, there's a guy that stands back here in the corner he's a lookout. Then you have the helmsman. The helmsman is the one that actually drives the ship. He controls the rudders on the ship, and that's where he stands. Normally these guys stand about a 4-hour watch, so he will not sit down. He will never sit down for that entire time.
What is it like to be away from your family for such a long time?
It's not good, not good. Actually, it's very lonely. You spend a lot of times going to different ports, but even when you go to the different ports, I used to always call my wife every day, which really drove my phone bill up. I wrote my wife every day, and she wrote me every day. I wrote my little girl every other week sometimes because she didn't always write me back. But you know, when you have a strong family tie, it's real hard being away from your family. Very, very hard. And you just don't get used to that. Yes.
When you're up in the air flying a jet or something, do you feel closer to God?
That's a good question. First of all, I don't fly jets, I fly turboprops. And it's not so much that you feel closer to God just because you're up in the air, because if God is within you, you should always be with him, whether you're in the air or on the ground. But what you do see a lot of times is we like to play with the clouds. And we'll go and fly just above the cloud bank. And, you know, of course, the clouds go up and down, so we'd be flying up and down and in and out of the clouds and stuff like that. And I would say the best time for me is at night. Because even at night, with a full moon, it's almost like the sun's out. So you feel, I think, a closeness. You feel more vulnerable because you know about you being simply a man, you being simply a pilot, and I need this airplane with these engines to get me up in the air when I don't have enough faith to do that on my own. But you feel a closeness to God, but I don't think it makes me feel any closer than I would if I was right here talking to you guys. Yes.
Do you pray in the air?
Yeah, I do. You pray a lot of times before you fly, but there are little things you see, like you see more stars falling when you're up above the atmosphere, you know, above the basic cloud level than you do just sitting here. So you see stars all the time, and when you see a star, sometimes you pray about that. I think about my family a lot. So when I'm away, I like to pray that they're okay. Could be anything. It's like the Bible says, pray without ceasing. Just pray because you're there, you're alive, and God has given you the opportunity to see something like that. You have a question?
How old is a Kitty Hawk and how long did it take to make it?
Okay, Kitty Hawk, it's just a little over 20 years. I think it's about 21, 22 years old right now. And it probably took them about 4 or 5 years to build it.
As a Christian, how do you feel about killing someone to defend your country?
It's a good question. You have to have faith that the reason that you're here is because you're here to do God's will. If you're here to do God's will, then you can believe that if it's my job today to drop that bomb, or in the case of the airplane that I fly, to drop a torpedo on a submarine that has 150 to 200 people in it, then I've got to believe that that's what he wants me to do. Now, that doesn't necessarily make me feel real good, but there are a lot of things that we don't understand what God has for us that he does. Now, the good thing about that is I never had to do that, though that's what I trained for. So I never had to come to a position in my life where I would not drop the bomb or would not drop the torpedo. But I had to believe that if I did, it was to defend my country, to defend my beliefs in one God. I think a part of being a Christian is you have to face both the good times and the bad times. If my dropping a torpedo or dropping a bomb or whatever was responsible for the death of someone else, if those people are willing to forgive me for doing that, then I cannot help but talk to them about it. You know, that doesn't mean that I'm going to rejoice and say, yeah, I did it, you know, because I'm not going to be filled with a lot of joy because I did it. But I have to be confident that I did that to preserve your freedom, preserve the freedom of your families, so that you guys, when you grow up, you don't have to grow up in an environment where you're going to be persecuted because of your beliefs as a Christian.
How many people were on the ship during the battle?
Well, if the ship is packed with just ship's company and the air wing, you're looking at about 5,250 people.
Have you ever been hit when you're flying?
When I'm flying? No, never have. Thank God.
Have you ever had anyone in the Navy or anything that you're really close to get killed in the line of duty?
That's a good question. Yeah, I have.
And do you feel that God is like looking down on you at any time?
Well, you kind of always think that. When you have someone that you're close to get killed for one reason or another, I guess most people want to know why. That's the question I think we all ask. And the problem with that is we don't always have the answer. We don't know why God did certain things. In fact, I know a friend of mine who was killed the day before he was supposed to leave the ship. And he had a wife and 2 or 3 boys, I believe. And that was tough. We had a funeral on board for him. You have to remember, this isn't like taking an airplane, like somebody goes to an airport and you taxi ways and go. You have to have knowledge. You have to learn how to fly an airplane off of here. The guy that's sitting here, when he goes and salutes the catapult officer, he's going to go from 0 to 150 miles per hour in 3 seconds. Now, what does that mean? That means when he's sitting there and if he sneezes, he's going to go in the water. If he sits there and he yawns, he's going to go up in the air. The airplane's going to stall out, and he's going to crash in the water. So you have to be trained to fly off an aircraft carrier. But there are all kinds of people around here. You have troubleshooters who are looking at the airplane and look for leaks. There's, say, oil or fuel or hydraulic fluid leaking from some place it shouldn't be. You got ordnancemen who are out there taking a look at the pins to make sure they're okay. You got guys looking at the wings, the tires, different parts of the airplane, even while it's sitting right here. And if any one of those guys see a problem and yell suspend, that will suspend the entire launch for that particular airplane. If they don't and they see it too late, that airplane's going flying.
These men work hard to keep the ship rolling and to help their country.
I learned that they had church and Bible studies on my dad's ship. If I were a Navy pilot and I went up in the air, it would be good to pray.
I think that Jesus watches all the people and he cares for all the Navy people that work on here, and he just helps them so they can do the things that they need to do.
My dad was a pilot, and he mostly rescued Rangers that were in danger from the Vietnam.
I've learned that these men work hard to defend their ship in times of need at any cost. I've also learned that the ship is 20 years old and it took a lot of time and patience to build it. They have basketball courts, policemen, doctors, barbers, everything on the ship that someone would need. In times of battle, they all come together and work together. And I also learned that I'm afraid of heights. We're on board the USS Kitty Hawk.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it.